A salaryman named Kanda finally gets a moment of peace at his desk. It all started when his colleague passionately recommended an OTOME game. He got completely hooked, diving deep into the game's world and characters. In fact, he was so dedicated that he proudly announced he'd finished the entire game. This is Kanda Shinichi, a 33-year-old office worker who was perfectly happy with his life. But his days were filled with work dinners, and his nights were spent gaming until dawn. Before he knew it, his body had been pushed far beyond its breaking point. His overworked body finally gave out, and he collapsed in the middle of the street. As his vision faded, the last thing he remembered was the image of his late mother.
Then he wakes up in an unfamiliar bed, finding himself in the body of a young boy.
He slowly comes to, remembering his collapse, now staring at a lavish, unfamiliar chandelier. Catching his reflection in a mirror, he's horrified to see a young boy's face staring back. He bolts through the grand hallway in a panic, his new body feeling impossibly small. A maid bursts in, joyfully announcing that Master Rid has awoken, leaving him completely baffled. Surrounded by concerned staff, he learns from a stern-looking man that he had suddenly collapsed in the garden. The man formally introduces himself as Garn, the head butler, his expression a mix of relief and scrutiny. Putting on a brave face, he flashes a bright smile and apologizes for causing everyone so much trouble. His polite apology earns a deep bow from the butler, while the maids whisper in surprise at his formal demeanor. He tries to ease the tension, asking Garn to address him casually as he always has. Suddenly, the sharp ring of a bell triggers a painful jolt as a crucial piece of the puzzle clicks into place. The name Rid triggers a painful rush of memories, merging his past life with the game's world. He recalls the OTOME game's cast, realizing he's become a minor character named Rid Baldia. The sprawling estate confirms his worst fear. He has been reborn into the world of the game as a side character. Wasting no time, he rings a service bell, determined to gather information about his current situation. He greets the responding maid with a disarming smile, feigning a simple need for confirmation. He attempts to verify his age, guessing 7, but is shocked to learn from the maid that he's only 6. He then pivots to geography, asking the maid to identify their country and family's domain on a map. He learns the Baldia family is politically neutral and that he lives in the mansion with his mother and sister. With all the facts aligning, he accepts his fate, but his intense focus makes the maid concerned for his health. He quickly feigns a headache to end the conversation, thanking the startled maid for her help. He suddenly grabs the maid's arm, his face a mask of panic as she cries out his name in surprise. He apologizes profusely, realizing the original Rid must have been a real handful for the staff. He then asks for her name with a dazzling smile, and she introduces herself as Danai. His formal and charming behavior completely wins over the flustered maid, who finds his new attitude incredibly cute. The next morning, a cheerful Danai wakes him, now seemingly his personal attendant. He opens his eyes, a slight blush creeping onto his face as he processes the situation. His adult mind short-circuits when she offers to help him dress, and he bashfully insists he can manage on his own. Now dressed, he's led to a grand dining hall, completely taken aback by the sheer luxury of a nobleman's breakfast. He asks Garn about his family, learning his father is away and his mother is unwell, before deciding to check on someone named Melty. As he heads to his mother's room, he recalls that Nanali Baldia was never even mentioned in the game, leaving him to wonder about this unknown character. He arrives at his mother's chambers, but a strange apprehension makes him pause at the imposing door. Sensing his unease, Danai suggests they return later, but he brushes off her concern with a cheerful facade. Danai reveals a shocking truth. The original Rid had been avoiding his mother ever since she became ill. He racks his brain, trying to understand the rift between mother and son, but comes up completely blank. Upon entering, he's greeted by the gentle smile of his mother, Nanali, who looks genuinely happy to see him. The sight of her face sends him reeling. She's the spitting image of his late mother from his past life. An uncontrollable torrent of grief and longing from his past life surges through him, leaving him breathless. A sudden coughing fit from his mother snaps him back to reality, and he rushes to her bedside in a panic. Taking her hand, he reassures his worried mother, who is more concerned about his collapse than her own illness. With a determined smile, he proudly declares he's fine, embracing his new role as the son of the Margrave and his beloved mother. He promises his smiling mother he'll visit again, his expression hardening with resolve as he leaves. Now fiercely determined, Rid corners Garn and demands to know the name of his mother's illness. When the butler refuses, Rid grabs him, his childish face filled with adult desperation, vowing he won't back down. Under the weight of Rid's persistence, Garn finally reveals the grim diagnosis in the cavernous hall: magic power depletion syndrome. The name of the disease hits Rid like a physical blow, leaving him stunned and sweating. Garn confesses he broke protocol, explaining that magic is the very life force of this world's inhabitants. He describes the horrifying nature of the illness, a terminal condition where the body's ability to recover magic fails, leading to a slow, inevitable death. Rid immediately connects this to a status ailment from the game, and realizing his information is incomplete, rushes towards the library. On his way, he runs into a young girl with a bouquet, instantly recognizing her as his younger sister, Melty. Finding her hiding shyly, he puts on a charming brotherly act, inviting her to look at picture books to ease her out of her shell. Overjoyed by his offer, Melty dashes to close the door after Rid confirms he's serious about reading together. Now settled on the couch, Rid begins reading a story about an owl to his captivated little sister. A memory surfaces of a younger Rid, overjoyed and doting on his baby sister when she was first born. However, his mother's illness shattered his world, and the original Rid began lashing out in fear and confusion. His misplaced anger and grief tragically pushed his younger sister away, creating a painful rift between them. He now understands their bond fractured so badly that they even stopped sharing meals together. Snapping back to the present, he's caught off guard when Melty apologizes for mimicking his avoidance of their mother. She promises not to copy him anymore, declaring she's a clever girl who understands now. Wanting to close the distance between them, he suggests she call him by his nickname, Mel, leaving her momentarily speechless. She happily agrees, revealing that since their mother uses that nickname for him, she feels it's okay for her to use it too. Melty beams, explaining that using his special nickname makes her feel special too. Rid thanks her for the sweet sentiment, solidifying their newly repaired bond. The story time proves too relaxing, and Melty soon drifts off to sleep on her brother's shoulder. He rings for a maid, and Danai appears instantly, ready to assist him. Garn arrives to find Danai carefully holding the sleeping Melty, questioning Rid about their time together. After Rid explains, Garn expresses his sincere gratitude, asking him to continue looking after his sister. Rid puffs up with pride, thinking to himself that of course he'd take care of his precious little sister. Garn observes that Rid seems like a different person since his collapse, sending Rid into a silent panic. He tries to compose himself, realizing his new personality is a stark contrast to the original Rid's behavior. Alone in the library, he reflects on his interactions with his mother and sister, his next steps becoming clear. He recalls the game's worst-case scenario, being condemned and exiled alongside the villainous. Determined to rewrite his fate, he sits at his desk, ready to plot his survival. The sheer impossibility of the task hits him, and he clutches his head in a moment of pure panic. His primary goal is clear: befriend the main characters to avoid the game's deadly roots. Realizing he can't rely on anyone else, he resolves to become self-sufficient and earn his own fortune. A major problem arises. He's stuck in a remote territory, far from the capital where the main story unfolds. But before he can even think about the game's plot, he knows there's a more pressing matter at hand. He finally understands the original Rid's actions were driven by a desperate, heartbreaking love for his ailing mother. With a soft smile, he acknowledges that the boy whose body he inhabits was, at his core, a kind child. He concludes that mending his fractured family, torn apart by his mother's illness, is the true first step to securing his future. A memory of his past life surfaces, a peaceful meal shared with his beloved mother. The memory shifts to a darker time, her final moments filled with gentle apologies as he wept by her side. He clenches his fist, vowing not to repeat the same regrets that haunted him at his mother's grave. With newfound resolve, he slams a book down, declaring he will absolutely save his mother this time. He assesses his new form, Rid Baldia, a strikingly beautiful 6-year-old with silver hair and purple eyes. He also discovers a cheat-like ability, perfect eidetic memory, allowing him to absorb any book in a single read. As he devours books, he's surprised to find that many plants and minerals are identical to those from his previous world. This sparks an idea for a potential business venture, but his thoughts are interrupted by Garn announcing his father, Reiner, has returned. He stands at the end of a grand hall, ready to meet his father, the Margrave Reiner Baldia, for the very first time. Having Garn arrange a meeting, he now knocks on his father's door, hoping his important proposal will be heard. Rid steps into the office, facing his stern and imposing father, the Margrave Reiner Baldia. Without preamble, his father questions his health, referencing the recent collapse in the garden. Looking small but composed in the large chair, Rid announces he has two specific requests for his father. His interest piqued, the Margrave leans forward, demanding to hear the details of his son's proposal. He boldly makes his first request, the chance to study magic and swordsmanship, a path the original Rid never took. He recalls that Rid's character in the game is a growth type, a hidden gem with massive potential. He remembers Rid's all-element magic aptitude, a trait most players overlooked due to his weak start, but one he personally mastered. His father remains unconvinced, pointing out his son's previously unstable behavior and questioning his true condition. He confesses that watching his mother's health decline had once plunged him into a state of utter despair. But now, with newfound clarity, he declares that despair solves nothing and he must become strong enough to be his mother's support. His father agrees to arrange for tutors, then asks about his son's second request. Rid clenches his small fists, steeling himself for his next bold move. He then makes his second request, personal funds to use at his own discretion. Rid explains he has business ideas, but his father scoffs at the notion of funding a venture with no concrete plans. The Margrave's gaze sharpens, demanding to know the true purpose behind this audacious request. With a disarming smile, Rid frames it as a gamble, an investment not in an idea but in him. He knows he's taking a risk, betting everything on the hope that a father's heart can be moved by his son's passion. His gamble pays off, and Rid leaps to his feet in pure elation, thanking his father for believing in him. Reiner sighs, agreeing to provide the capital, though he's bewildered by his son's grand ambitions. Just as the meeting seems to conclude, Rid announces he has one final request for his surprised father. He asks his father to join them for meals, hoping to mend their distant relationship. The Margrave pauses, his attention caught by the affectionate nickname Rid uses for his sister. Later at the dinner table, Rid and Melty share a happy meal, their bond clearly strengthened. Their father startles Melty by asking if he can also use her special nickname. The family now eats together in the vast dining hall, a sight unseen for a long time. Melty fiercely objects, declaring that nickname is reserved only for her mother and brother. Undeterred, Rid then announces his next plan, a personal inspection of the family's territory. His father is stunned into silence by the 6-year-old's lordly request, dropping his cutlery in shock. After a moment, the Margrave agrees and orders Garn to prepare a carriage for the tour. Rid is introduced to his new knight escorts Rubens and Diana, who are ready to accompany him. As the carriage rattles along, Rid gazes out at the vast frontier territory, a land known for its fertile soil and booming agriculture. He recalls that the thriving olive production in the region was actually his father's brilliant idea. Snapped from his thoughts, Diana announces their imminent arrival, though this trip is far from a simple tour. This isn't a sightseeing trip. Armed with his father's investment, he's zeroed in on the territory's largest town. As they approach the bustling town, he knows this is the place where his grand business venture will begin. Arriving in the lively town square, Rid can't hide his excitement, taking in the bustling scene with wide eyes. His escorts quickly remind him to stay close, cautioning him against wandering off alone in the crowded streets. Diana questions their destination with a worried look, but Rid reassures her with a cheerful and confident smile. With unwavering certainty, he pushes open the doors to a specific establishment, his knights watching from behind. They are immediately greeted by an energetic catgirl maid, leaving Rid momentarily stunned by her appearance. The maid recognizes his name from a letter he sent to Christie, confirming this meeting was prearranged. A towering and elegant woman introduces herself as Christie Saffron, the head of the Christie Company. Rid internally confirms this is the elf merchant Garn told him about, the only one operating in the Baldia territory. Now, in a lavish reception room, Christie politely asks if he's sure about making his knight escorts wait outside. He insists on privacy for their discussion, ready to dive straight into his business proposal with a confident smile. He kicks off his pitch by asking the merchant if she's familiar with products like skin lotion or hair rinse. He recalls his library research, where he was thrilled to find that aloe, a key ingredient from his world, also exists here. His earlier attempts to explain skincare to Danai were met with total bewilderment, as the concept was unheard of. He learned that while aloe grows everywhere, it's only used for wounds, its incredible skincare properties completely unknown. Christie reveals that while she knows of such products, they are considered ultra-rare luxury goods, far beyond the reach of most people. He reveals his plan to mass-produce affordable skincare, using knowledge from his past life to create prototypes. The elf merchant listens with keen interest, her sharp business sense already at work. He asks if she's ever heard of similar products, and she confirms the idea is completely novel in this market. With a flourish, he reveals he's already created prototypes, leaving the seasoned merchant stunned by his preparedness. He urges her to test the product, and she cautiously applies the strange new lotion to her hand. Her eyes widen in pure astonishment as she feels the lotion's immediate and impressive effects. The usually composed elf is so thrilled by the product's potential that she can barely contain her excitement. She confesses her own struggles with dry skin, declaring that this product is a dream come true and will undoubtedly sell. Satisfied with her reaction, he hands her the second prototype, a hair rinse for her to test later. Completely won over, she insists he call her by a nickname, and passionately declares they must bring these products to market immediately. With the skincare deal sealed, Rid reveals he has even more business ideas to secure his future. He then tasks the well-connected merchant with a personal and urgent quest to find 2 rare herbs for his mother's cure. Christie admits she initially dismissed his letter, but now sees the terrifyingly sharp mind behind the childish face. What started as humoring a noble's son has now become a golden opportunity to expand her family's business empire.
Overflowing with entrepreneurial spirit, Christie tells her maid, Emma, that things are about to get very exciting.
Stepping outside, he's met by his waiting night escorts who inquire about the outcome of his meeting. Rid flashes a triumphant smile, confirming the partnership was a huge success and their future is bright. His escorts look relieved, with Diana now holding the case of his revolutionary prototypes. As they walk through the market, his gaze is suddenly drawn to a small, cloaked figure moving through the crowd. The sight is a stark reminder of his precarious situation, fueling his determination to escape the grim future that awaits him. He notices the cloaked girl looking lost and nervously scanning her surroundings. Rid approaches the startled girl, his concern evident as he asks if she needs help. He introduces himself as part of the local lord's retinue, offering his assistance to the lost girl. She confirms his suspicions, explaining that she's been separated from her companion in the crowd. Rid offers to guide her back if she knows the location, but she seems unsure of what to do. Just then, a man in uniform spots the girl and rushes towards them with obvious relief. With a charming smile, Rid states that helping a lady in distress is simply the right thing to do. The man bows deeply in gratitude, but Rid modestly asks him to raise his head. His chivalrous behavior leaves the girl's companion stunned, while she looks at him with newfound admiration. An elegant elf woman appears, her immense relief revealing the lost girl is actually a princess. Back at their lodgings, the elf attendant questions the pensive princess about her distracted state. The young princess is completely smitten, lamenting that she never even learned the charming boy's name. Her attendant playfully suggests it could be love, much to the flustered princess's denial. Meanwhile, in the carriage, Rubens asks Rid if he regrets not getting the name of the girl he just rescued. The day's excitement has completely worn him out, and Rid has fallen asleep against a surprised Diana. While Rubens smiles at the sight, Diana finds herself flustered by how adorable her young charge is. His escorts decide it's best to head back to the mansion and let the exhausted boy rest. Upon his return, Rid is immediately informed that his new magic tutor has arrived. The tutor, a sharp-looking woman named Sandra, introduces herself with a confident smile, ready to begin his lessons. Rid eagerly accepts her tutelage, and the two formally agree to begin his journey into the world of magic. In the library, Sandra kicks things off by asking if Rid has any prior experience with magic. Rid internally celebrates, recalling from the game that his character has a hidden talent for all magic elements. He plays it cool, telling his new tutor he's only ever read about magic in books. Sandra begins the lesson, explaining that magic is fueled by converting one's own life force into power. She passionately promises to guide him through the complex process, telling him to put his complete trust in her. Deciding a demonstration is in order, she suggests they head to the training grounds, and Rid eagerly agrees. His pure excitement charms Sandra, who privately notes his adorable passion for magic. In a grand training hall, Sandra prepares to show her young student what a real mage can do. She unleashes a massive fireball, demonstrating her formidable power with a spectacular explosion. Rid is left completely speechless, his eyes sparkling with awe at the incredible display of magic. He runs up to his new tutor, gushing about how incredible her magic demonstration was. His enthusiastic praise completely catches the usually composed Sandra off guard. She becomes giddy with delight at being called teacher, much to Rid's confusion. Composing herself, Sandra explains that advanced mages can even cast spells without incantations, further amazing her student. She instructs him to begin with the basics, and Rid eagerly clenches his fists, ready to convert his life force into magic. Sandra tempers his expectations, reminding him that mastering silent casting is a goal for the distant future. Despite his enthusiasm, Rid struggles immensely, unable to grasp the feeling of manipulating his magic at all. Seeing his frustration, Sandra offers to teach him a little trick to get the hang of it. She asks him to hold out his hands, and as she takes them, Rid gets a sudden sense of foreboding. A powerful surge of magic flows into him, and he cries out in shock as Sandra coolly reassures him this is part of the lesson. He feels a strange sensation as something is drawn out from deep within him through his palms. Sandra smirks, telling him to endure it a little longer as magical energy crackles between their hands. Rid realizes with a pained blush that his new sadistic teacher is absolutely enjoying his suffering. The agonizing session finally ends, leaving him gasping on the floor as Sandra coolly declares the lesson complete. She explains this forced method is a shortcut, allowing him to experience the feeling of magic conversion instantly. Sandra formally calls the technique Forced Magic Conversion Awakening, apologizing for the rough introduction. Still shaken, Rid processes the information, sensing there must be a significant drawback to this method. He leaps back, accusing his tutor of failing to mention the intense pain involved beforehand. She simply flashes a brilliant smile, admitting that surprising him was far more entertaining. Now that he's felt his life force, she instructs him to try converting it into magic on his own. He clenches his fists, focusing intently on compressing his life force into magical energy. A sudden glimmer of power surrounds him, and Sandra confirms he has successfully manifested his magic. She then instructs him to visualize her fireball, aim for the target, and unleash the spell. Rid closes his eyes, perfectly recreating the image of a swirling fire orb in his mind. He thrusts his hand forward, unleashing a powerful, swirling vortex of dark energy at the target. His tutor can only stare in utter disbelief as the unexpected spell hurtles across the room. After the spell hits its mark, Rid leaps into the air, ecstatic that he actually did it. Sandra is left completely speechless by her student's shocking and unprecedented progress. Rid himself is amazed, admitting he never expected to master casting a spell on his very first day. His tutor explains that casting a spell normally requires endless practice, making his achievement all the more unbelievable. Sandra praises his incredible imagination, suggesting he might be a true prodigy. He proceeds to flawlessly cast the spell multiple times, leaving his tutor utterly flabbergasted by his raw talent. The intense practice leaves him drained, and he realizes he got carried away and depleted his magical energy. His tutor explains that while people are born with different magic levels, one's power can be increased through consistent training. Rid asks about recovery methods, only to learn that natural rest is the only known way to replenish magic. She reveals that while many have tried to create magic recovery potions, all attempts throughout history have ended in failure. This contradicts his game knowledge, making him wonder why the magic potions he used in the game don't exist here. Sandra then lectures him on the two main categories of magic, elemental and special, revealing her forced awakening technique is a unique spell she created. The idea that he can create his own unique spells fills Rid with excitement for the possibilities ahead. For now, his tutor advises him to focus on mastering the basics, and Rid eagerly agrees to work hard. Rid reflects on how his expanding abilities are making his new life genuinely enjoyable. His swordsmanship training is about to begin as his knight escort Rubens runs to meet him on the grounds. Rid's warm-up stretches completely baffle the knight, who has never seen such movements before. Rubens explains that while they run drills, they don't perform these strange pre-exercise rituals. With a knowing smile, Rid realizes the concept of warm-up exercises is another piece of knowledge missing from this world. Despite his past life's lack of athleticism, he grips a wooden sword, knowing he must master combat to survive. Rubens compliments his natural form and suggests they move on to practice swings, much to Rid's delight. He takes his stance and begins practicing his swings, getting a feel for the heavy wooden sword. Seeing his potential, Rubens invites the young boy to strike at him from any angle he chooses. Filled with determination, Rid charges forward, ready to test his skills against the seasoned knight. He lunges forward, but the seasoned knight easily deflects his attack. As they spar, Rid senses an unfamiliar ease and fluidity in his movements. He discovers his new body is surprisingly light, making every swing of the sword feel exhilarating. A smug smile spreads across his face as he realizes Rid's body is a high-spec model, gifted in both mind and combat. The training ends, leaving Rid breathless but earning high praise from Diana, who sees his immense potential. Rubens playfully boasts that the boy couldn't land a single hit, leaving Rid frustrated and plotting his revenge. Changing tactics, Rid casually brings up the fact that his two knight escorts are childhood friends. His innocent question sends the usually composed Rubens into a state of pure, sputtering panic. With a sly smile, Rid goes in for the kill, bluntly asking the knight if he's in love with Diana. Rid smirks, pointing out the knight's blushing face and revealing he knows the whole staff gossips about his unconfessed feelings. The direct hit sends Rubens into a flustered mess, completely losing his composure. Rid watches from afar as Diana approaches the sulking knight to see what's wrong. Diana reveals Rubens has a soft spot for her, then turns her sharp gaze on Rid, demanding to know what he said. Rid cheekily calls Rubens a coward, immediately sensing the air turn cold as Diana's expression darkens. Diana's pleasant demeanor shatters, replaced by a terrifying fury directed at the now petrified Rubens. She violently grabs the stunned knight by the collar, shaking him while demanding answers. Her anger vanishes as she sweetly dismisses Rid, then calmly asks for a private chat, her smile hiding a clear warning. Rid, completely intimidated, can only manage a flustered agreement to her request. As they walk off, Rid learns two crucial lessons. Never get on Diana's bad side, and stay out of other people's romantic affairs. Later, Rid puts on an animated performance, reading a storybook to his captivated sister and smiling mother. Melty beams, praising her brother's theatrical storytelling and his talent for using different character voices. He's simply happy that Melty is enjoying herself, even as she pouts that he's gotten so good he even scolds her with a special voice. Their mother watches with a gentle smile, remarking that she's surprised by his hidden talent and comparing his performance to a professional actor. As his mother affectionately pats Melty's head, Rid's expression shifts to one of quiet, determined concern. He's once again reminded of the grim truth. His mother suffers from an incurable terminal illness, a secret known to very few. He notes that while his mother seems more energetic than usual, her pale complexion is a constant worrying reminder of her condition. Announcing that a guest has arrived, Rid takes his leave while his mother and sister cheerfully wave him goodbye. The elf merchant Christie holds up the prototypes with a triumphant smile, announcing that their plans for commercialization are finally taking shape. His face lights up with pure, unadulterated joy at the news of their business success. After numerous meetings, Christie has taken the lead, rapidly handling the logistics of ingredient cultivation and factory setup that he couldn't manage alone. Christie reveals his investment was a game-changer, while Rid's mind is already on increasing production. Christie raises the need for customer education on proper usage, but her talk of health management baffles him. He then introduces the revolutionary concept of different skin types, stressing that product compatibility will vary. His expression turns grim as he stresses the importance of preventing dangerous counterfeit products that could harm users. He lays out his master plan, providing after-sales service, branding with the Baldia crest, and establishing an exclusive retail network through her company. The elf merchant is completely floored by his next proposal, making her the official spokesperson for the entire line. He flashes a brilliant smile, declaring she's the absolute perfect fit for the role. A flashback reveals he already pitched this to his father, who was so impressed he suggested presenting the products to the monarchy. This sets up Christie's most crucial mission, presenting the products as an offering to the Magnoria Empire. He then explains his plan for Christie to accompany his father to the capital as the official representative, a move that piques the Margrave's interest. Christie considers his proposal, admitting that an elegant woman like herself would indeed be the perfect model. Rid explains his brilliant marketing strategy. Her beauty will inspire men to purchase the products as gifts. The Margrave is stunned by his 6-year-old son's business acumen, but ultimately agrees to the plan. Just as their meeting concludes, Christy reveals she has one more surprise for the young lord.
She presents him with the incredibly rare moonlight grass, one of the herbs he desperately needs for his mother's cure.
Overcome with emotion, Rid clutches the precious herb, a new wave of hope washing over him. He bows deeply, expressing his immense gratitude to the surprised merchant. Christy reassures him that her search for the second herb is ongoing and asks for his patience. A few days later, his father and Christy set off for the capital, carrying the revolutionary products as an offering to the royal family. With the skincare line launched, Rid immediately shifts his focus to developing his next groundbreaking product. He establishes a business model where his territory cultivates the ingredients and Christie's company handles all production and sales, ensuring he gets a cut. With the moonlight grass secured, he focuses on creating a magic recovery potion, certain it will be the key to his mother's treatment. His ambition hits a wall as he slumps over his desk, lamenting his complete lack of pharmaceutical knowledge. Garn suggests consulting his magic tutor, Sandra, who seems to have a keen interest in his new project. Rid presents the rare herb to Sandra, explaining its legendary ability to restore magical power. His tutor is completely astounded, confirming the herb is the mythical moonlight grass she thought was only a legend. Sandra then reveals a shocking coincidence. She was once the head of a research institute in the capital dedicated to creating that very potion. A flashback shows her past, leading a team of elite mages in the capital, all tasked with the impossible goal of developing a magic recovery potion. Back in the past, Sandra grows suspicious when a crucial delivery for her research fails to arrive on schedule. Her investigation is interrupted when a maid informs her of a rare and unexpected guest's arrival at the castle. In the past, Sandra walks through a grand hall, frustrated that her research has stalled once again. The guest is revealed to be a sinister noblewoman who remarks on Sandra's constant restlessness. Sandra realizes that her massive budget and hand-picked team had earned her the resentment of other nobles. With no results and dwindling staff, she was forced to resign and take full responsibility for the project's failure. The noblewoman cruelly reminds the disgraced Sandra that her failure to obey a royal command is a crime worthy of exile. Just as she hit rock bottom, Rid's father appeared, offering her a position as a private tutor. She concludes her story, explaining that this is how she ended up in the Baldia territory. Rid realizes he's asking his tutor to revisit the very research that brought her so much suffering. But his resolve doesn't waver, his determination hardening in his eyes. He reveals his mother's illness, begging Sandra to help him create a recovery potion to buy her more time. He earnestly pleads with Sandra, explaining that her expertise is essential to create the potion. A memory of his father's kindness flashes through her mind, and she resolves to repay the debt. With a determined smile, Sandra agrees to help, and Rid joyfully shakes her hand in gratitude. Now reignited with a researcher's passion, she agrees to his terms, ready to tackle the impossible once more. Rid reveals that all previous research on the herb was lost, making their new endeavor a shot in the dark. Just as she's leaving with the precious herb, Rid stops her, having one more thing to say. She playfully reminds him to call her Teacher Sandra during lessons, despite their new partnership. Rid is amused by her demand, while Sandra smugly savors her return to the world of research. He gazes out the window, wondering how his father and Christy are faring on their mission in the capital. Meanwhile, in the capital, a tense and anxious Christy is escorted by imperial knights. The Empress is so impressed she wants to buy the rights to the products for the entire empire. Christy is internally screaming Rid's name, realizing the insane scale of his ambition. The scene flashes back to their journey, with Reiner asking a nervous Christy if she's ready for the capital. Christy declares she's ready for this massive opportunity, while Reiner warns her of the capital's dangers. As they arrive, Christy is completely overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the imperial capital. The narration reveals the capital is a massive, heavily fortified fortress city. The city is protected by a double wall system, separating the noble district from the common areas. Their carriage is held up at a checkpoint, with Christy noting the inspection is taking an unusually long time. A young, authoritative girl appears, suspiciously demanding to inspect their offering. Reiner intervenes, vouching for Christy and intimidating the guard into letting them pass. Inside their lodgings, Christy and Emma are startled by a knight peering through their window. As they walk through the palace, Reiner explains the guard was a subordinate of their rival, Earl Roland. Reiner apologizes for not warning her about the political games, admitting he underestimated their opponent's boldness. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of the boisterous Earl Roland himself. The Earl condescendingly remarks on their long journey before Christie formally introduces herself. He then gets uncomfortably close, his sleazy smile revealing his ill intentions as he brings up rumors about her. The Earl taunts her with a false rumor that she was kicked out of her family's company, trying to undermine her credibility. Reiner calmly observes, realizing the Earl is spreading baseless rumors, and that Emma is not just an attendant but a true comrade. The Earl escalates his insults, referring to her beast kin-maid with a derogatory term, leaving Christie speechless with rage. Christie's composure finally shatters, and she clenches her fist, declaring that while she can endure personal attacks, insulting her friend is unforgivable. Reiner steps forward, his expression cold as he tells the Earl his behavior is disgraceful and an insult to the Empress herself. The flustered Earl offers a weak apology before making a hasty retreat, unable to stand against the Margrave's authority. Later, Reiner explains that Earl Roland is a vulgar man, driven solely by his lust for power and money. Christie comforts her tearful maid, reassuring Emma that she's done nothing wrong and that the Earl is now banned from her company. A palace maid arrives to escort them, telling Christie not to worry as the Empress is a very reasonable person. Christie takes a deep breath and kneels, steeling her resolve for the crucial royal audience ahead. They enter the grand throne room where other nobles are already assembled, and a powerful voice greets them. The rulers of the empire are revealed, Emperor Arwen Magnoria and Empress Matilda Magnoria, seated on their magnificent thrones. The emperor acknowledges Reiner's arrival, his gaze falling on the bowing elf merchant beside him. Reiner formally introduces Christie Saffron, daughter of a baron from a neighboring kingdom, piquing the emperor's interest. The emperor notes her recent noble status, having previously known her only as a merchant's daughter. He subtly rebukes Earl Roland, suggesting his earlier treatment of a noble's daughter was out of line. The court ladies whisper amongst themselves as Christie clenches her fist, enduring the intense scrutiny. The Empress impatiently cuts through the tension, demanding to see the products immediately. Christie formally presents the elegant vials containing the revolutionary skincare prototypes. While the noblemen look on with disinterest, the Empress and her ladies are visibly intrigued. As proof of their effectiveness, Christie confidently offers her own radiant hair for the Empress's inspection. Surprised by the bold offer, the Empress signals for her lady-in-waiting to approach and examine Christie's hair. The attendant is stunned by the silky texture, while Christie declares that only a woman can truly appreciate the product's value. Earl Roland objects loudly, accusing Christie of endangering the Empress with her unknown concoction. The Empress cuts the Earl off with a chilling glare, reminding him that his opinion was not requested. Her sharp words leave Earl Roland and his companions completely stunned and humiliated. The Empress then demonstrates the lotion herself, musing about its potential to win over every woman in the castle. After a lady-in-waiting praises the results, the Empress declares it the finest product she's ever received. Thoroughly impressed, the Empress makes a stunning offer to buy the exclusive rights for the entire empire. Christie is left completely speechless, unable to comprehend the massive scale of the Empress's proposal. Her maid, Emma, tries to snap her out of her shock as the court waits for an answer. Reiner smoothly intervenes, explaining that the decision isn't hers alone, but ultimately defers the final choice to her. Overwhelmed, Christie looks to Reiner for help, feeling utterly useless in the face of such a monumental negotiation. A flashback reveals Rid had already prepared her for this, outlining a plan that gave her the confidence to either walk away or secure their future. Following Rid's plan, Christie counters with an offer of exclusive priority rights just for the Empress. While her court ladies are shocked by the refusal, the Empress gracefully accepts the new terms. The Empress declares that Christie is right. Forcibly seizing the rights would ultimately harm the Empire's reputation. The Emperor backs her up, declaring that the production rights will officially belong to the Christie Company and the Baldia territory. The Empress gives Christie a playful wink, leaving the merchant stunned by how smoothly the negotiation concluded. A sudden realization dawns on Christie as she looks between the composed Margrave and the smiling Empress. She finally understands that the entire negotiation was a perfectly orchestrated performance. The Empress's true goal was never just to use the products, but to secure the manufacturing rights from the very beginning. The Empress had merely used her authority to extract the promise she wanted, leaving Earl Roland utterly crushed by his public defeat. Back in their lodgings, an utterly exhausted Christie collapses onto the sofa, the day's stress finally catching up to her. Reiner sips his tea, reminding Christie he warned her about the capital's dangers, just as a maid announces the Empress has arrived. The Empress herself enters the room, accompanied by Reiner, and apologizes for the sudden intrusion. Now seated, Christie and Emma find themselves in a private meeting with the most powerful woman in the Empire. Reiner explains the political maneuvering, apologizing for using her as a pawn in their game against his rivals. It's revealed the Empress was aware of the products beforehand, but a gag order was issued to control the information flow. This secrecy turned the product rights into a coveted prize, sparking a fierce competition among the capital's nobles. Christie smiles, understanding that the public audience was a calculated move to put the greedy nobles in their place. With the Empress's public endorsement, Earl Roland and his allies are left fuming, their schemes completely thwarted. The Empress then dismisses the men to talk business, playfully suggesting her attendant have a chat with Emma. No sooner are they alone than Christie excitedly brings up the exclusive rights they secured, already planning their next move. The Empress reveals the true motive behind her swift actions, turning the conversation to a pressing political matter. She then drops a bombshell on Reiner, declaring his son Rid is the only suitable marriage candidate for an important alliance. The scene shifts to a bonus story, showing a sleepy Rid yawning as he gets ready for bed. He sometimes dreams of the original Rid's memories, reliving the moment the young boy collapsed in despair over his mother. In the dream, a much younger and more innocent Rid proudly shows his mother a butterfly he has caught. His mother gently thanks him for the sight, then watches as he releases the butterfly, asking why he let it go. She explains that caging the fragile creature would be cruel as it would quickly die, a concept the boy struggles to grasp. She defines life as the force that allows them to move and speak, and death as the moment they can never meet again. The terrified boy asks if she will die too, but she reassures him with a gentle smile that she will always be by his side. He recalls the solemn promise she made, a memory that strengthens his resolve in the present. He recalls that, much like the original Rid, his past self was also just a simple boy who loved catching bugs. His reverie is broken as Melty rushes up to him, a sense of familiarity washing over him. Melty proudly shows off a tiny bird she found in the garden, its parent hovering protectively nearby. While he praises her cute find, Melty eagerly asks her brother if she can be the one to take care of it. He sees their mother's reflection in Melty's features, certain that she will understand the lesson he's about to share. He gently explains that the bird's parents must be looking for it, and that they should return it to the wild. His profound words prompt a curious Melty to ask him the simple yet deep question: what is life? In the sunlit garden, he prepares to answer her question as she lets the small bird go free. The chapter concludes with a stylish shot of Rid and his tutor Sandra, ready to take on their next challenge. The narrative shifts to a somber metaphor, illustrating his mother's condition as a constant, draining loss, like water from a cracked glass. Her illness appeared without warning, and within days she was too weak to even stand on her own. She feels a constant draining sensation, as if her very life force is slowly slipping away. The fear of not waking up haunts her, a memory of Melty's despair over the illness fueling her anxiety. She notices Rid's recent change, remarking to Melty how he's become as calm and composed as an adult. Melty's cheerful stories about Rid's kindness strengthen her resolve. She can't give up when her son is trying so hard. With renewed determination, his mother Nanalie vows to fight her illness with everything she has. Elsewhere, Rid enjoys a moment of peace, basking in the warm sun and clear skies. Motivated by his father's efforts, he decides it's time to test his own magical aptitude, just like in the game. He reflects on how his actions have already diverged from the game's plot, giving him hope that he can forge a new destiny. Yet, he can't escape the chilling realization that this world is still cruelly similar to the game he once played. Rid smiles, deciding to test his fire magic first before moving on to the other elements. To his own astonishment, he successfully casts spells from every single magical element. He focuses his imagination, envisioning how to shape his magic into powerful attacks like a fire or lightning spear. With a determined cry, he unleashes a fire spear, a powerful projectile of dark energy that smashes into the ground. He proudly assesses the damage, deeming his first combat spell a definite success. His practice is suddenly interrupted by his sister Melty, who claps with delight at his incredible display. The startled Rid realizes his sister has been secretly watching his magic practice from the very beginning. He leans in to make a deal, asking her to keep his powers a secret in exchange for reading her favorite stories. Melty begs to see the magic again, but he explains that drawing attention to his abilities would be dangerous. A few days later, a letter arrives from Christie in the capital, and Rid anxiously wonders about the outcome of her mission. He reads Christie's letter, learning his father was deceived and a rival earl was banned from court, a man he's never even met. Just then, his tutor Sandra arrives, announcing it's time for his magic lesson on elemental aptitudes. Rid feigns ignorance, asking if special magic also requires a unique aptitude to use. Sandra explains that unlike elemental magic, special magic requires no aptitude, meaning anyone can potentially learn it. The revelation excites Rid, who realizes this means he can create his very own unique spells. His tutor clarifies that special magic requires a much stronger image and more power than standard attack spells. He connects this to his own experience, remembering how a clear mental image was key to casting his first spell. Rid correctly deduces that without enough imagination or power, any attempt to create or teach special magic will fail. Sandra adds that only the creator can teach their unique spell, a process that drains power from both teacher and student. Changing topics, she excitedly reports that the moonlight grass works, and now they must figure out how to turn it into a potion. Sandra admits she was so focused on the herb's form that she completely forgot to consider its effects. Overcome with a researcher's zeal, she thanks Rid profusely and dashes off to create a prototype, completely forgetting his lesson. Later, Rid finds himself caught in a sudden violent thunderstorm, the sky flashing with lightning. He ponders how to measure his own magical power, wondering if a special tool exists for such a purpose. Undeterred by the downpour, he smiles and decides to hurry back to the mansion. Arriving soaked to the bone, he's immediately met by a flurry of panicked maids. They brush off his protests, insisting he take a warm bath to avoid a repeat of his past collapse. His wet clothes are discarded as the maids prepare a luxurious bath for him. Rid sinks into the warm water, a blissful expression on his face as he enjoys the rare comfort. He reflects that since most people just use wet cloths, having a full bathtub brought to his room is an incredible luxury. He wonders about the exact volume of water used for his bath, a thought that sparks a new idea. Rid realizes this world uses the same metric system as his old one, a crucial piece of information. A brilliant idea strikes him, and he realizes he can use this knowledge to his advantage. He immediately puts his plan into motion, acquiring a precisely measured container with Garn's help. Standing in the garden, he prepares to conduct an experiment to quantify his magical power. He uses his water magic to perfectly fill a 1-liter vessel, establishing a baseline for his test. By repeatedly filling the container, he creates his own unit of measurement for magical output, which he names a riddle. With practice, he becomes more precise, deciding to increase the repetitions to hone his control. He trains tirelessly, casting the spell hundreds of times to internalize the feeling of consuming a specific amount of magic. Rid focuses with intense concentration, mastering the ability to control and measure his magical energy. He establishes his own unit of measurement, calculating his total magic power to be over 980 riddles. Rid conceptualizes a new special magic power measurement, designed to quantify his own power and that of others. He casts the spell for the first time, and a number representing his magic power appears directly in his mind. He tries to cast it again, but this time nothing seems to happen, leaving him momentarily confused. A second attempt succeeds, and he realizes the spell costs 20 riddles, confirming his new ability works perfectly. He immediately thinks of his mother, realizing this new spell will be crucial for tracking the effectiveness of the recovery potion. Feeling accomplished, he walks back to the mansion under the moonlight, confident he's made another breakthrough. Later, he explains his new creation to Sandra, who is so stunned she asks him to repeat himself. He calmly explains that he created a unique spell just to measure the cost of casting magic. His tutor is left speechless, completely baffled by his unconventional thinking and how he even managed to create such a spell. Rid calmly lays out his entire thought process, from measuring water to creating a numerical value for his magic. His tutor admits she never would have conceived of such a thing, while Rid smugly says he just kind of did it. Sandra's expression turns deadly serious, warning him to never speak of this spell again or risk being taken to the capital. He questions her extreme reaction, arguing that his idea seems simple enough for any water mage to discover. She explains that most people can't even use magic, and only a true genius like him would think to quantify it. Rid learns that in this world, magic is reserved for combat and research, not for everyday convenience. He finds it a complete waste that in a world full of fantasy, magic is so rarely utilized. Sandra calls him an unconventional prodigy, admitting she never would have thought to create such a precise spell. Realizing his own potential, he wonders why Sandra, a master of magic conversion, isn't the one being scouted by the capital. With a knowing smile, she reveals that's exactly why she was chosen to be the director of a top research institute. She smugly admits that despite her genius, she was quickly crushed by the capital's political schemes. Rid realizes his unconventional talent has made him an object of intense fascination for his tutor. He agrees to keep his ability secret, only to be intimidated when his tutor gets close, calling him amusingly easy to read. She then strikes a dramatic pose, urging him to shatter all conventions and become a talent too great to be suppressed. With their new partnership formed, Sandra presents Rid with several prototypes of the Moonlight Grass potion. He steals his resolve, knowing that the herb's foul taste is a small price to pay for his mother's sake. With a look of pure disgust, he bravely begins the experiment, tasting the first raw sample. After tasting every single prototype, he carefully considers the results of their initial tests. He concludes that eating the herb raw restores some magic, but its overwhelming bitterness makes it completely unpalatable. Boiling the herb proves even worse, resulting in an undrinkable concoction with the least effective results. He determines that drying the herb into a powder is the most potent method, despite its terrible taste. His tutor leans in with a devilish smile, suggesting the way he consumes the final sample might change its effects. Sandra praises his endurance, concluding that the powdered form will be suitable for his mother to take. He realizes that with this breakthrough, their goal is finally within reach. He clenches his fist in triumph, having finally created a working magic recovery potion. He glances nervously at his tutor, who wears a smug look, clearly enjoying the situation. He can't help but remember the sadistic glee his tutor took in his suffering. He vows to never forget this favor, nor the humiliation that came with it. A bad feeling creeps over him as Sandra cryptically suggests asking his sister for a hint about what's to come. Just then, he spots his sister Melty walking down the corridor, completely unaware of his inner turmoil. Rid cheerfully greets his sister Melty, who runs to welcome him home. Melty lets out a massive sneeze, sending a powerful gust towards her startled brother. As a maid scolds Melty, Rid realizes with a grimace that everyone is now keeping their distance from him. His butler Garn informs him that the stench from the potion experiment is too strong, and he must wash up immediately. Rid lets out a frustrated scream from the mansion, finally relenting to his tutor's sadistic plan. Elsewhere, Rubens leads the knights in a series of synchronized warm-up exercises. Rid learns that his radio calisthenics have become an official part of the knights' training regimen. Rubens calls out Rid for his sloppy form, noting that the young lord's own exercises are different from what he taught. Rid reflects on his training, realizing he understood the importance of warm-ups, but never expected them to become a large-scale phenomenon. Rubens lands a clean hit, reminding the distracted Rid that a moment's carelessness in training could be fatal in a real fight. Rid's ears perk up at the mention of dungeons, and he eagerly asks his knight escort for more details. Rubens explains that dungeons are considered a type of living organism, a concept Rid recognizes from his past life's games. He learns that dungeons form around a magical core, which then spawns monsters and treasure to lure in unsuspecting victims. To prevent a monster outbreak, knights and adventurers must delve deep to destroy the core, but a damaged core can simply retreat and recover. Rid visualizes the dungeon structure, comparing it to an ant colony with a powerful boss monster at its heart. He excitedly asks about adventurer guilds, and Rubens confirms the Empire has both state-run and private organizations. The knight explains that guilds offer quests to freelancers, with the Baldia Territories Guild focusing on gathering requests. Rid daydreams about joining a guild, while Rubens praises his rapid progress, certain he'll conquer dungeons with ease. With a sly grin, Rid teases that by then, Rubens better have finally proposed to Diana, sending the knight into a flustered mess. His teasing is cut short as Diana appears, revealing she's still waiting for that proposal, leaving Rid utterly stunned. A flustered Rubens denies any possibility of romance, but Rid confidently insists that Diana's feelings are obvious. Rid learns that while her parents push for marriage, Diana constantly dismisses Rubens as just a friend, infuriating the knight. The knight reveals Diana even brings him practice lunches, claiming they're for her future husband, not him. Rid is left completely baffled by Diana's frustratingly dense behavior. He then recalls their childhood promise and orders the knight to take Diana to their special spot and finally confess. Rid challenges the stunned knight to decipher the true meaning behind Diana's confusing actions. The knight's expression softens as he begins to seriously consider Diana's real intentions. Seeing a flicker of understanding, Rid encourages the knight, who reluctantly agrees to the plan. The knight's internal monologue reveals he can't just let things stay as they are. Later, Rid sits with his sister, a smug smile on his face as he decides to keep his matchmaking scheme a secret for now. Rubens takes Diana to their childhood haunt, where she wistfully recalls the times they used to play there. Overcome with emotion, the blushing knight finally stammers out his long-held feelings for her. Rid later learns his meddling paid off, as the two knights finally began their official relationship. The young matchmaker watches from his window, smugly thinking they should just get married already. The next morning, Rid is fast asleep, with birds chirping cheerfully outside his window. His peaceful slumber is shattered as his sister Melty launches herself onto his bed with a full-body tackle. He notes that while Melty has become his personal alarm clock, her wake-up method is a bit too intense. Sometimes he wakes up first, much to the disappointment of a pouting Melty who missed her chance to pounce. After their morning routine, Melty begins her rigorous schedule of lessons, from etiquette to dance. Rid realizes these morning ambushes are her only chance to spend time with him before her studies begin. Rid's morning routine is interrupted by the grand return of his father, Rainer, from his trip to the capital. As the children greet them, an exhausted Christie looks at Rid, silently communicating that she gave her mission her all. Rid rushes to Christie's side, alarmed as she stumbles from sheer exhaustion, supported by her maid Emma. Rainer admits the trip was tiring and sends the exhausted Christie to rest before summoning Rid to his office for a private discussion. In the office, Rainer's intense, unreadable gaze meets Rid's, leaving the boy completely bewildered. Seated across from his son, Rainer cuts straight to the point, demanding to know why Rid has changed so drastically. Caught off guard by the direct question, Rid internally debates his options before resolving that he can no longer deceive his father. His father presses further, pointing out that Rid's advanced knowledge and adult-like composure are impossible to explain by normal means. Rid recalls the moment he collapsed, when the memories of his past life flooded back, and carefully chooses his words. He explains that his memories from a past life merged with the original Rid's, creating an entirely new personality. He explains the original Rid was filled with guilt for lashing out at his family and simply wanted to be as strong as his father. The original Rid's despair over his mother's illness now fuels his unwavering resolve to protect his family. A tense silence settles over the room as father and son sit across from each other, processing the unbelievable revelation. Rid flinches under his father's unreadable gaze, bracing for his reaction to the incredible story. Rainer breaks the silence by simply saying his son's name, his expression still serious. In a stunning turn, his father bows his head deeply, apologizing for not realizing his son's suffering. The flustered boy begs his father to look up, as Rainer internally berates himself for failing to see the despair his son was hiding. Overcome with emotion, Rid realizes his father truly believes him, just as Rainer laments his own failures as a parent. His father accepts the incredible story, then asks about the medicine Rid secretly developed using knowledge from his past life. Rid proudly declares the medicine is a magic recovery potion, a statement that shatters his father's composure. Rid calmly explains the entire process, from acquiring the herb to creating the potion with Sandra's help. He clarifies that the potion is only a stopgap measure, and they still need to find a permanent cure for Nanalie. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Rainer offers his full support, willing to help in any way he can. Before Rid can respond, Rainer summons Garn, announcing there's another important matter to discuss. With a serious expression, his father drops a bombshell, bluntly informing Rid that his marriage has been arranged. The flustered boy stammers, asking when this will happen, only to learn the wedding could be just a few months away. Rainer admits that the news is sudden for him as well, having only just been informed by the Emperor. He explains this is a political marriage to a princess of the same age, who will be moving to the Baldia territory to strengthen their alliance. Garn wisely suggests building a separate mansion for the princess to accommodate the cultural differences between their nations.
Reiner agrees and tasks Rid with the planning, leaving the boy to wonder why a foreign princess would be matched with a mere Margrave's son. Reiner begins to explain the complex political situation, revealing the princess is from the dark elf-ruled Renart kingdom. A map illustrates that the human-led Balst kingdom and the dark elf Renarte kingdom are neighbors with a history of conflict. In the past, the Balst kingdom's brutal slave hunting pushed relations with Renart to the brink of war. Facing crippling sanctions, Renart sought aid from the Magnoria Empire, who offered help in exchange for their vassalage. Renarte accepted, becoming a vassal state while retaining its autonomy, only needing Magnoria's approval for major decisions. Magnoria then banned the slave trade, and all captured dark elves were freed, resolving the immediate crisis. Rid realizes that marrying the princess to a high-ranking imperial noble would spark dangerous political infighting over the line of succession. Therefore, Rid, a Margrave's son of similar age and far from the capital's power struggles, was deemed the perfect candidate. Reiner sips his tea, reminding his son that as an imperial noble, such a political marriage is a duty he cannot escape. Rid laments the princess's fate, realizing she's being married off to a border family simply because of her nation's vassal status. Reiner tells his son that if he pities the princess, he must be the one to cherish her more than anyone. He declares that the fate of this princess, who has been tossed about by destiny, now rests in Rid's hands. With a confident smile, Reiner entrusts the princess's protection to Rid, who accepts his new duty. Rid contemplates his future bride, a dark elf princess named Farah Renarte. His father confirms her identity as the first princess of the Renart kingdom. Rid immediately requests to oversee the design of her new mansion and to visit her kingdom beforehand. He cryptically explains his request is tied to his past life and might even be a clue to curing his mother. His father agrees to the short trip, explaining that while the marriage is not yet public, Rid will be presented as a candidate. As he walks away, Rid can't help but marvel at the fact that he's getting engaged at only 6 years old. Garn offers his full support, certain that Rid can bring the princess happiness with their help. Rid thanks Garn for the encouragement, promising to do his best for his future bride. He then privately muses on the absurdity of having a wife when he's still just a child himself. As Garn departs with a knowing smile, Rid dismisses his own concerns with a light-hearted laugh. Deciding to check on Christy, he quietly approaches her room and knocks before peeking inside. His curiosity piqued by the silence, he cautiously tiptoes into the room to find her. He discovers the elven merchant fast asleep, completely exhausted from her trip. Rid is momentarily stunned by her peaceful and unguarded appearance. He sits by her bed, admiring her beauty and noting how tired she must be, just as she begins to murmur. Christy shifts in her sleep, muttering something about "Your Highness," clearly reliving the royal audience in her dreams. Her sleep-talking leaves Rid completely flustered, wondering what kind of dream she's having. Flustered by her sleep-talking, Rid decides he's heard enough and tries to make a quiet escape. He finds the door mysteriously held shut, realizing with a jolt that someone is on the other side. The door slowly creaks open, confirming that his escape has been deliberately blocked. His sister Melty peeks through the gap, having caught her brother in a very compromising position. She scolds him for being in a lady's room alone, while Rid nervously begs her to let him out. Rid apologizes profusely, desperate to leave before Christy wakes up and discovers him. Later, a now-awake Christy apologizes for her exhaustion, completely oblivious to Rid's earlier predicament. He asks her to recount her mission, and she begins to explain the full story of her time in the capital. Christy details her confrontation with Earl Roland and the secret tea party, where she negotiated with the Empress. She reveals that the Emperor later ordered Earl Roland to pay a hefty compensation for insulting a foreign noble's daughter. Christy reveals she refused the compensation, a move that only deepened Earl Roland's public humiliation. The Emperor then gave her the floor, and Christy seized the opportunity to address the entire court. With a sharp, determined gaze, she prepared to deliver her final, calculated blow. She publicly shamed the nobles for believing baseless rumors, warning their actions could damage the Empire's reputation. Her words hit their mark, leaving the furious Earl Roland with no choice but to accept his defeat. Christy then offered a magnanimous apology on behalf of the court, a move that left Reiner and Emma in awe. Rid admits she may have gone too far, but Christy explains she had to make it a lesson for the entire nobility. Now, Earl Roland's faction has lost all credibility and won't dare to make a move against them for some time. Christie explains the Earl's goal was to monopolize their business, making him an enemy she had to defeat sooner or later. Rid smiles, genuinely grateful that Christie joined their cause and that her mission was a resounding success. Christie is suddenly struck by a powerful memory from her past. She recalls the painful times when her hard work and efforts went completely unrecognized. Turning to Rid, she expresses that meeting him was the greatest honor and a stroke of incredible luck. The story flashes back to the moment Earl Roland's taunts triggered her resolve to build her own company. Born into the saffron merchant family, Christie's older brother was always the designated heir. She had once planned to simply support her brother from the shadows, but others saw her true potential. Whispers began to spread that Christie, with her superior talent, was the one who truly deserved to lead. To avoid a family feud, she chose to leave and forge her own path in the Baldia territory. But starting a new business from nothing was a grueling struggle, pushing her to the brink of despair. And it was during her darkest hour that a young boy with a brilliant plan appeared, changing her fate forever. He reflects on her past, acknowledging that talent alone can't overcome every obstacle. Yet he believes that true luck only comes to those who fight tooth and nail for recognition. He tells Christie that her success is her own, a result of her tireless efforts in the Baldia territory. Rid urges her to have more confidence, reminding her of all she has achieved on her own. His genuine praise leaves the usually composed merchant completely flustered. Christie is overwhelmed by his praise, unable to believe he thinks so highly of her. Tears stream down her face as she's overcome with gratitude, realizing she's finally received the validation she always craved. Once she composes herself, Rid smoothly transitions back to business, bringing up the deal with the Empress. Regaining her professional demeanor, Christie details the contract terms, prioritizing the Empress's supply and requiring upfront payment for all future orders. When Rid questions their ability to meet the first order, she confidently explains she's already secured the raw materials through Reiner. Christie excitedly reveals she's already cornering the market on raw materials, using every resource at her disposal. She explains that the Empress will be their greatest advertisement, making it crucial to secure her supply first. Rid compliments her, saying her beauty will make everyone want the product, leaving the flustered merchant speechless. He doubles down, insisting that her using the products is the ultimate proof of their quality, a point she can't deny. He then reveals a crucial secret, explaining the rinse can be made with common olive oil, not just rare ingredients. Christie is touched to learn Rid has named the new product line after her and her loyal maid, Emma. Rid outlines his vision for an entire product line, with different scents and effects, sparking Christie's business sense. He concludes the briefing, establishing that all future communication with the Empress will now go through him. Rid reflects on the formidable Empress Matilda, realizing just how dangerous a political ally she can be. He cheerfully concludes that anyone who impresses the Empress so thoroughly must be a truly formidable negotiator. A heavy silence hangs between Rid and Christie after their intense conversation. Christie is stunned when Rid casually reveals he knows what she was saying in her sleep. She erupts in fury, accusing him of being the worst for watching a woman sleep. His frantic apologies are interrupted by Melty and a maid arriving with more tea. He desperately tries to convince his sister not to tell anyone he saw Christie's sleeping face. Melty turns away coldly, unimpressed by his excuses and leaving him in utter despair. The scene shifts to a rainy day, with a single drop hitting a puddle, mirroring a feeling of unease. Back in her room, Nanalie is tormented by the feeling of her life force slowly dripping away. With tears in her eyes, she clenches her teeth, vowing that she will not be defeated by her illness. She declares with renewed resolve that she will stand on her own 2 feet again, no matter what. Nanalie steels herself, telling herself to act like an adult and face what's coming. A knock on the door interrupts her thoughts, and a voice invites the visitors to enter. Reiner enters with Rid and his tutor Sandra, who politely announces their arrival. Sandra greets Nanalie with a bright smile, and the two women lock eyes for the first time. Nanalie formally introduces herself, apologizing for receiving them while bedridden. Sandra introduces herself as a magic researcher, leaving Rid in awe of his mother's graceful beauty. Reiner finally reveals the truth, admitting he's been hiding the name of her illness from her. He reveals her condition is magic power depletion syndrome, a fatal and incurable disease. Reiner is stunned when Nanalie calmly replies that she was already aware of her diagnosis. A flashback reveals she overheard the devastating news from a conversation she wasn't meant to hear. Natalie calmly reassures her husband, explaining she already suspected her illness was fatal. Rid is shocked she knows the exact name, while Natalie apologizes for causing him so much pain. An enraged Reiner confronts his wife, furious that she hid her suffering and faced her fate alone. He collapses in guilt, but Natalie comforts him, recalling their happier past and shared love. Rid screams that his mother's magic is almost gone, prompting Sandra to use the potion as Natalie writhes in pain. Sandra desperately tries to administer the medicine, while a terrified Rid begs his mother not to give up. As Natalie resists, Rid breaks down completely, pleading for his mother not to die. The boy is suddenly pushed aside as his father takes decisive action. Reiner holds his wife close, using his own mouth to transfer the life-saving potion to her. Holding the now unconscious Natalie, Reiner recalls the day he first met her while working in the capital. The story flashes back to a disguised man named Arwen, who explains his trip to town is for both reconnaissance and to buy his wife a gift. He reveals his father's health is failing, meaning he must soon take over and will lose the freedom to walk among his people. Arwen vows to protect this town, urging his attendant to burn the site into his memory before he takes on his new responsibilities. As his attendant tries to intervene, Arwen calmly tells him not to overdo it, while a nearby knight is tasked with his protection. He approaches a young Natalie, who is being cornered in an alley by a nobleman and his lackeys. The nobleman offers to overlook her shame if she comes with them, leaving the terrified Natalie to silently plead for help. Arwen steps in, only for the nobleman to cover Natalie's mouth and falsely claim she's his lover having a secret meeting. Natalie struggles free, pleading for help and insisting she has no connection to the men, a plea Arwen calmly accepts. After a swift confrontation, the defeated nobleman from the Rogus family flees, screaming threats of revenge. Arwen checks on the crying Natalie, who thanks him for his help as his attendant offers a comforting gesture. Arwen's attendant accidentally reveals his master's true name, Reiner, which Natalie overhears with admiration. Months later, Reiner is annoyed to receive an unexpected marriage proposal, recommended by both his parents and the Empress. He learns his potential bride is the famed Crimson Lady, Natalie Ronimus, a beauty known for rejecting every suitor. During their first meeting, Natalie reveals she knows Crimson Lady is his compliment to her beautiful hair, leaving Reiner surprised. She confesses that after rejecting a previous suitor, a nasty rumor had spread that she was a cold-hearted woman. Natalie beams, overjoyed that Reiner's nickname for her held such a kind and wonderful meaning. Moved by his sincerity, Reiner proposes and Natalie joyfully accepts, ready to become the lady of the Baldia territory. Back in the present, Rid desperately uses his new spell to measure his mother's magic as she consumes the potion. The result appears in his mind, showing her magic power has risen to 101, a sign that the potion is working. As Rid and Sandra celebrate their success, a weak Natalie slowly opens her eyes and whispers her son's name. Overwhelmed with relief, Rid bursts into tears as his mother weakly reassures him that she's all right. Later, Rid marvels at the potion's effectiveness, while Sandra credits his father's quick thinking for saving Natalie. He recalls his father's decisive action, administering the potion himself when Natalie refused, before Sandra asks for a private word. Seeing his parents share a quiet moment, Rid decides to give them some much-needed privacy. Meanwhile, in the Renard Kingdom, the Dark Elf King questions the Emperor's true motive for arranging his daughter's marriage. His advisor suggests they use the upcoming visit to vet the candidate, though he seems to have his own reservations. Rid, now in Renard, cheekily suggests they test if the Margrave's son is worthy of their princess, hinting at a specific interest. Back in the past, Rid angrily reminds his father of his earlier self-pity, calling him out for claiming to be a failure. Rid and Sandra watch in stunned silence as Reiner suddenly pulls his wife into a tight emotional embrace. After their moment, Natalie pulls back slightly, ready to get down to the important business they need to discuss. Rid urgently casts his magic power measurement spell, fearing the worst for his mother's dwindling life force. Reiner is lost in a memory of his wife's radiant beauty, recalling the first time he was captivated by her. Natalie teases Rid and Sandra about their closeness, noting how mature her son has become, much to his embarrassment. Rid quickly changes the subject, telling a stunned Sandra he needs her help to create another new special magic. He reveals his next ambitious project, a spell he calls Recall Magic. He explains the theory from his past life. Memories are never truly lost, merely dormant within the mind.
He reasons that since he has memories from a past life, they must be stored in the soul, not just the brain. This leads him to a groundbreaking question. Is it possible to create a method to view the memories of the soul? Sandra introduces him to a similar concept, a philosophy of magic known as Seima Shindo. Rid learns Seima Shindo is an obscure philosophy in this world, known by very few people. Sandra explains that Seima Shindo connects life force, magic, and the nervous system, which Rid links to his own theory. He realizes his magic conversion is the closest thing to this philosophy and decides to test it, despite his mother's concern. He meditates, converting life force into magic and then attempting to push it deep within himself. Seeing no immediate change, he persists, wondering if the converted energy returns to a specific place, like the soul. Suddenly, he feels his magic being siphoned into a bright, unknown void, realizing he may have made a mistake. He's thrown into a strange, disorienting space filled with endless floating bookshelves. As he tries to get his bearings in the vast library, a mysterious figure greets him from behind. Rid is stunned to find himself face to face with an identical copy of himself. The doppelganger introduces himself as Memory, the personification of Rid's memories, and asks for his cooperation. Rid explains he wants to search his memories, and Memory confirms it's possible if he acts as the intermediary. Memory explains that while this place is normally inaccessible, he can now be summoned to help Rid search for information. The doppelganger asks how Rid plans to summon him, noting that it will naturally require a bit of magic. He warns that this realm of the soul is a delicate place that Rid can't simply visit whenever he pleases. Memory tells him to simply call his name when he's needed, leaving Rid to stammer out his thanks. With a final wave, Memory and the library of the soul begin to dissolve into brilliant light. Back in reality, Rid's eyes snap open, startling a concerned Sandra who was watching over him. The sudden return to consciousness sends Sandra tumbling backward as a disoriented Rid tries to figure out where he is. Sandra glares at him, explaining she was startled when he suddenly shouted after being completely still. He apologizes for worrying them, as his mother notes from her bed that he was out for quite a long time. Rid contemplates his hands, recalling his doppelganger's final cryptic warning about a dangerous place. Rid apologizes to Sandra for the failed experiment, admitting he feared he might not have returned. Back in his room, he quietly tests his new ability, whispering the name of his doppelganger, Memory. A voice suddenly echoes in his mind, confirming that the connection to his soul's library is real. Memory teases him, amused that their minds are now truly linked, much to Rid's slight annoyance. The doppelganger asks what he wants to search for, but Rid confirms he was just testing the connection. With a promise to return when called, the presence of Memory fades away from Rid's mind. Later, Rid checks on his mother, who is looking much healthier thanks to Sandra's careful administration of the potion. He smirks, noticing how his usually eccentric tutor is putting on a perfectly prim and proper act for his mother. Filled with renewed purpose, he vows to create a permanent cure to save his mother and anyone else with her illness. His intense focus is broken when Sandra playfully accuses him of thinking rude thoughts, which he frantically denies. Since his mother's collapse, Sandra has become her primary physician, even learning Rid's magic power measurement spell. Sandra notices Rid's intense expression, asking what's on his mind as he stares off into the distance. His mother gently warns him not to overthink things, but his mind is already set on his next move. Emma interrupts their quiet moment, reminding Rid that his father has summoned him for an important discussion. Reiner greets him with a serious look, announcing that the itinerary for their trip to the Renard Kingdom is finalized. The reality of the situation hits Rid, who realizes with a jolt that his journey is about to begin. Rid's trip has a second purpose. The moonlight grass for the potion can't be cultivated locally, creating a supply crisis. He recalls Renard's advanced agriculture, hoping to secure a trade route and find a clue to his mother's permanent cure. His father warns that while the Renarde king is cooperative, some noble factions are strongly opposed to the marriage. Reiner reveals the grim possibility that these factions may try to remove Rid from the running permanently. Rid realizes that being a candidate means he'll be dragged into the imperial court's power struggles, a dangerously delicate position. He asks how his father knows so much, and Reiner explains that a nation is never united, and he must gather intelligence to protect their lands. A sudden thought strikes Rid as he processes his father's words. He asks if they have a spy in Renard, and Reiner cryptically promises to teach him the ways of espionage later. Meanwhile, a Renart noble named Norris argues that marrying a Margrave's son from the border is an excellent political move for them. The Renart king seems to agree with Norris's assessment, but holds a look of deep reservation. The noble, Norris Tamuska, humbly presents his counsel, framing it as a simple suggestion following the marriage proposal. The king reluctantly concedes that Norris's points are valid, though his expression remains troubled. Alone, the king worries that Norris is using the marriage to infiltrate the empire and spark a rebellion, creating more conflict. The king's son storms in, furiously demanding to know why his father is sending his sister Farah away as a political hostage. The king's son, Prince Rains, enters the throne room, formally addressing his father with a grave expression. He clenches his fist, arguing that his 6-year-old sister Farah shouldn't be married off to just anyone, let alone outside the kingdom. The king explains that this is a vital political connection, urging his son to learn the harsh realities of leadership. The prince erupts in anger, vehemently refusing to accept his father's political reasoning. The king looks on with a stern gaze, thinking his son is still too childish and emotional for a prince. Ordered to cool his head in his room, the prince reluctantly apologizes for his outburst and turns to leave. As he walks down a corridor to cool off, he spots his sister Farah approaching with her attendant. The princess calls out to her brother, surprised to see him, and explains she was on her way to see their mother. Farah greets her brother with a bright and innocent smile, completely unaware of the political turmoil surrounding her. She asks why he's upset, surprised to hear their father got angry, as Rains explains he was told to cool his head. The prince reflects on his sister's beauty and grace, noting she inherited their mother's elegance. He proudly declares that Farah is a sister to be cherished, his resolve hardening as he looks at her smile. After her attendant reminds her of the time, Farah politely bows and takes her leave. The prince watches her go, vowing that his sister will never be treated with disrespect. He clenches his fist, determined to protect Farah from her political fate, unaware of his future rival. Back in his own time, Rid is suddenly hit with a vision of the prince's vow, leaving him reeling in confusion. He realizes that communicating with memory drains his magic like a phone call, and asks his doppelganger why he seems so angry. Memory explains that Rid's new spell summons him to search the archives of his soul for specific information. The doppelganger scolds Rid for trying to access too much at once, accusing him of skipping the boring parts of his own memories. Rid recalls that in his past life, he used the game's skip function on the main story, leaving his knowledge of the core plot dangerously incomplete. Rid recalls that in his past life's game, Renardi had a prince named Rains who was a surprisingly useful character. He decides to ask Memory for a detailed explanation of how the memory search actually works. Memory clarifies that only consciously learned information is easily accessible, while passive memories are nearly impossible to find. The doppelganger compares the task to finding a single shredded paper in a landfill, but Rid agrees to try anyway. The scene shifts to his training, where Rubens demands Rid pay closer attention to his movements. Rid collapses to the ground, completely out of breath from the intense physical exertion. His night instructor announces it's time to begin the next phase of training, magic-based body enhancement. Rubens explains that true enhancement requires circulating magic through the body, a skill that must be practiced until it's instinctual. The two conditions for this skill are revealed: mastering magic conversion and achieving a certain level of martial prowess. Rubens advises him to feel the flow of magic rather than overthink it, a concept that leaves Rid utterly stunned. Rid hits the floor, utterly defeated, realizing the vast difference in stamina between him and his seemingly tireless knight. A sly grin spreads across Rubens's face as he correctly deduces that Rid has been using body enhancement this entire time. Fueled by a new challenge, Rid declares he will master body enhancement and finally defeat his instructor in a gutsy training showdown. He quickly grasps the concept, realizing his magic training with Sandra has made him a natural at this new skill. The knight muses that with such talent, Rid will have no rivals his age in 10 years, much to the boy's smug satisfaction. The training intensifies as Rid is ordered to maintain his body enhancement while running at full speed. A montage shows his relentless training regimen, from basic conditioning to sparring, even imagining himself as his own cheerleader. Their sparring grows more intense, with a determined Rid vowing to land a hit while Rubens easily parries his attacks. He reflects that since mastering the new technique, his training is far less exhausting and much more enjoyable. Yet he acknowledges that the vast gap in experience, reach, and physique means he's still a long way from victory. A fierce desire to win surges through Rid as he lunges forward with all his might. He tries to use his smaller size to his advantage, hoping to land a single, decisive blow. But Rubens effortlessly catches him, praising his guts while calling his move a poor one. The knight ends the session, noting that Rid's persistence is admirable even if his technique is lacking. Rubens smirks, revealing that as a special instructor, he's just been toying with Rid so far. Rid is stunned, realizing the grueling session was nothing more than a light warm-up for his mentor. Their training is interrupted by the sudden arrival of his father, Reiner, who was delayed by paperwork. Reiner asks if the teasing is over, much to Rid's complete surprise. His father then challenges him to a duel, wanting to test Rid's full strength, including his new body enhancement. With a determined grin, Rid accepts the challenge and prepares to face his father in his first real match. Rid lunges forward with his training sword, pouring all his enhanced strength into a single determined strike. His father is genuinely impressed, noting that such skill and body enhancement are terrifyingly advanced for a boy his age. But Reiner effortlessly parries the blow, asking if that's all he has, prompting Rid to declare the fight isn't over. With a confident smirk, Reiner announces he's going on the offensive, forcing a winded Rid to brace for the attack. The boy struggles to keep up as his father moves with blinding speed, the sheer pressure of the duel taking its toll. Rid collapses in exhaustion, realizing this bout was far more draining than his sessions with Rubens, as his father declares he's passed the test. Reiner then announces the next test is one of courage, a trial of Rid's mental fortitude to remain unshaken. He explains that Rid must understand his own limits now, as one day he'll face real battles where courage determines survival. Reiner draws a real saber, commenting that Rid is worth training, a statement that leaves the boy utterly horrified. Rid is given one final order, to stand his ground and not flinch, a command he accepts with steely resolve. With a sharp glint in his eye, Reiner announces the test is starting, leaving Rid to stare in horror at the real blade. Rid is crushed by an overwhelming pressure, a terrifying aura he recognizes as his father's true unleashed power. His father closes the distance in a blur, ready to show his son the terrifying reality of a genuine battle. Frozen by a wave of pure killing intent, Rid can only watch as the blade's tip stops just shy of his face. The sheer terror proves too much, and Rid finally breaks, flinching away and crying out in fear. The intense pressure vanishes, leaving Rid collapsed on the forest floor as his father calmly lowers his sword. Reiner coldly questions his son's courage, asking why he flinched when he was explicitly told to watch his every move. Rid admits his defeat, explaining that the combination of the real blade and his father's killing intent was too terrifying to endure. His father clarifies the lesson. Fear is a vital tool for survival, but letting it control you is a death sentence in a real fight. Reiner offers a challenging smile, asking if Rid can keep up, to which the boy responds with a look of fierce determination. Rubens offers some final encouragement, explaining this brutal training is a trial only Rid can endure. Reiner announces the next round, ordering his son to follow his every move without blinking. His father unleashes another blindingly fast swing, testing the boy's resolve once again. Rid trembles with fear but steels himself, knowing this terrifying ordeal is necessary for his survival. His father barks another order not to look away, as Rid fights back tears to keep his eyes fixed on the blade. The boy focuses intently, his eyes tracking the deadly arc of his father's sword. Reiner pauses, noting with a smirk that his son is finally starting to get used to the pressure. A winded Rid can't believe there's more, just as Rubens announces the beginning of the next phase. Reiner draws a line in the dirt, challenging Rid to get past him and his saber to reach Rubens. With a look of pure grit, Rid accepts the challenge, ready to face his father's final, daunting test. Rid dodges his father's initial block and makes a break for it, starting the daunting trial. He's left breathless by his father's incredible speed, a blur of motion he can barely comprehend. But as he adapts to the pace, he starts to believe there's a chance he can actually win this. With a look of fiery resolve, he decides to show his father the full extent of his training. He plants his foot, gathering all his strength for one last decisive charge. Drawing on his bond with his instructor, he imagines them cheering each other on to victory. The boy flings himself forward in a desperate leap, aiming to clear the line and reach Rubens. His instructor catches him, bursting with pride and tears as he congratulates the boy on his success.
His father declares the day's training complete, adding with a sly grin that he'll be participating from now on. Rid is left speechless when his father declares this grueling trial will now be a regular event. Rid tearfully thanks his father, who feels the boy's gratitude might be slightly misplaced. Their intense session is interrupted when a small voice calls out to Rid from across the field. His younger sister Melty comes running with her maid, having witnessed the entire ordeal. With puffed cheeks and a furious glare, she prepares to defend her brother's honor. Melty confronts her father, accusing him of bullying Rid while landing a series of tiny, indignant punches. The maid explains that Melty insisted on watching, leaving the little girl to tearfully declare she hates her father for being so mean. Taking her brother by the hand, Melty announces that his training is officially over and she's taking him away. Rid gently explains that their father was only being strict for his own good, comforting his protective little sister. Later, a dejected Reiner laments that his daughter now hates him, only to be startled by his office door flying open. A timid Melty stands in the doorway, shyly apologizing for her earlier harsh words. Reiner gently comforts his daughter, who is overcome with tears of gratitude for his understanding. Melty clings to her brother, making him promise to be her bodyguard and return home safely. Rid whispers a final farewell to his sister, while their father watches the touching scene from a distance. Melty then runs to her father, tugging on his leg to get his attention one last time. Reiner scoops her into his arms, promising to return as soon as he can, much to Rid's slight annoyance. With a beaming smile, Melty seals the promise with her father, her worries finally eased. Sandra confidently assures Rid she will take care of his mother, using the magic he taught her. With his family seeing him off, Rid sets out on his journey to the Renarte Kingdom with renewed determination. At the same time, deep in the demon forest bordering Renarte, two mysterious creatures have a fateful encounter. In the pouring rain, a small unknown being peeks out from the safety of a hollow tree. The small creature is immediately confronted by a massive winged snake that lets out a fearsome roar. Terrified, the slime realizes it's cornered by a green snake and desperately wishes to survive. The monstrous snake lunges forward, its jaws wide open and ready to strike the helpless slime. But before it can land the final blow, a ferocious black beast intercepts the attack with a powerful counter. The mysterious creature swiftly overpowers the snake, leaving the little slime to watch in stunned silence. Standing victorious over its defeated foe, the black beast licks its chops, its power undeniable. The slime is completely mesmerized, overcome with admiration for its cool and powerful savior. The beast watches the slime happily bounce away, having saved it from certain doom. It ponders why a lone slime, the weakest creature in the demon forest's food chain, would be in such a dangerous place. Unlike normal slimes that divide, this one accumulated magic until it developed a unique and powerful emotion. The beast glares menacingly at the trembling slime, annoyed by its persistent admiration. The slime recalls its lonely existence, choosing solitude to survive, only to be found by the green snake. The beast turns back with a look of pure exasperation, clearly fed up with its new follower. Annoyed, the beast asks why the slime is following it, but the little creature just continues to trail behind. The beast's patience finally snaps as it realizes the slime has no intention of leaving. It sighs, realizing if it abandons the slime it will be eaten, and it can't bring itself to do it. Thus begins their strange life together, with the beast reluctantly deciding to act as the slime's protector. The beast returns from a hunt with a large fish, announcing its arrival to its new companion. It's stunned to find its messy den has been completely cleaned, the pile of old bones gone without a trace. The beast stares in disbelief as the slime proudly bounces, revealing it ate all the leftover scraps and bones. The flustered beast tosses its catch to the slime, pretending it's not a reward for the cleaning. It strikes a deal, allowing the slime to stay in exchange for permanent housekeeping duties. A new routine begins, with the beast hunting and the slime tidying, forming an unspoken understanding. One day the slime tries to wake its sleeping companion, telling it that it's time to go hunting. The groggy beast grumbles that it only hunts when it's hungry, clearly not a morning person. It suddenly jolts awake, shocked to realize it can hear the slime's voice directly in its mind. The slime explains its intense desire to communicate must have unlocked this new telepathic ability. When the slime wishes for a cool form like the beast, the creature cheekily offers to make it its bride. The earnest slime takes the offer to heart, vowing to pray every day for its wish to come true. Soon, rumors spread of a shadow cougar and a slime forming an inseparable, almost couple-like bond. The shadow cougar muses that the demon forest entrance is surprisingly safe, a perfect place for a weak slime. A strange, fragmented thought echoes in its mind, a warning not to be sold away. Under the magical night sky, the slime's determination finally reaches its peak. The slime excitedly tells its companion to watch, preparing to reveal a stunning transformation. It erupts in a brilliant light, its form shifting from a simple slime into an elegant white-furred beast. The newly formed creature opens its sharp, intelligent eyes, meeting the shadow cougar's stunned gaze. The white beast asks for an opinion on its new form, leaving the black beast utterly speechless at the sight. The flustered shadow cougar admits the new form is cute, prompting the white beast to remind it of their previous promise. The scene shifts to a beautiful humanoid figure emerging from a field of flowers, identified only as slime. The shadow cougar furiously confirms it remembers, declaring it fell for the slime's heart, not its form, and wanted to repay its devotion. The shadow cougar asks the white beast to be its mate and stay with it forever. The beast declares that it doesn't matter what form the slime takes, its feelings will never change. Overcome with emotion, the white beast bursts into tears of pure joy. The former slime affectionately nuzzles its new mate, professing its deep love. And so, the shadow cougar and the slime began their strange, intertwined life in the demon forest. The story hints that their path will one day cross with a mysterious child, before cutting back to a sleeping Rid. Back in the present, Rid's expedition to Renart, accompanied by Christie and his knights, proceeds smoothly. Arriving at a stopover town, Rid is hit with a wave of motion sickness from the long carriage ride. He immediately collapses onto a bed, telling his attendant he needs to rest. Lying in bed, Rid decides it's time to summon his other self, whispering the name Memory. Rid asks Memory to search for information on Prince Rhines, recalling that the game had character portraits for him. His doppelganger presents a mental image of the stern-looking dark elf prince, leaving Rid completely impressed. Rid memorizes the prince's features, guessing from his demeanor that he might be a difficult Sundry type. His concentration is broken by a knock at the door, revealing a concerned Christie checking in on him. She offers him some special candies she made from herbs, explaining they help with motion sickness. Stunned by her kindness, Rid momentarily sees her as a radiant goddess for her thoughtful gesture. He gratefully accepts the candy, his spirits lifted and his resolve renewed for the journey ahead. Sometime later, Rid looks out the carriage window, announcing they've finally reached the Renart Kingdom's checkpoint. He recalls how the game had exciting side stories, realizing he's about to step into one of them. Standing guard at the gate is the very same dark elf prince he just researched, ready to meet his rival. Rid is immediately struck by the prince's cool hybrid-style uniform, a mix of Eastern and Western design. He marvels at Renarte's unique culture, a blend of traditional and modern styles reminiscent of his past life. His father's voice reminds him this cultural fusion is a result of their alliance, urging him to observe everything. Looking out the window, Rid is delighted to see familiar rice paddies, a rare sight outside of Renarte. A wave of homesickness inspires him to set up a trade route to bring rice back to his own territory. As they approach a massive castle, he steels his resolve, knowing the princess awaits him inside. The grand gates of their destination swing open, marking the official start of their diplomatic visit. A maid greets them at the entrance, announcing that their lodgings are prepared and their host will arrive shortly. A well-dressed dark elf with a monocle introduces himself as Zack, their official attendant for the visit. Rid is surprised to see a familiar face, as Zack explains he's merely a messenger who has assisted them before. Zack explains their guest house has been designed to mimic the style of Rid's home territory. Rid is stunned when Christie reveals their lodgings even include a luxurious hot spring. Overjoyed by the prospect of a real bath, Rid's imagination transforms the guest house into a 5-star resort. After the long journey, Rid happily collapses onto a bed in his new room, relieved to have finally arrived. He's suddenly confronted by a familiar face in a maid's uniform, a skilled knight named Diana who will be his personal guard. Diana confidently reassures the flustered boy that he has nothing to worry about under her protection. To his horror, she begins pulling an arsenal of hidden weapons from her uniform, recommending each one. A frantic Rid begs her to stop, overwhelmed by her intense level of preparation. From a distance, Christie watches in confusion, wondering why a knight would rely on such unconventional tools. Diana explains that as a woman, she uses these weapons to overcome the physical disadvantages she faces against male opponents. Diana explains with a somber look that she did whatever it took to join the knights. Christie teases that all her hard work must have been for Rubens, a suggestion that leaves Diana flustered.
A flashback shows a younger Diana was inspired to train hard after seeing a tearful Rubens giving it his all. As Rid denies being a crybaby, Diana quickly changes the subject, formally introducing herself as his maid for the duration of their stay. Rid notes her intimidating presence, realizing he's supposed to ignore her despite being ordered to keep her in the room. He looks out over the estate, deciding to let her be for now but will call if anything happens. Meanwhile, an attendant informs Princess Farah that the Baldia delegation has arrived at the guest house. Farah contemplates her fate, knowing her marriage and her guard's assignment are political moves to remove inconvenient people. The scene shifts to a young dark elf who recalls being told to quit his training and feeling resentful about being sent away. The young elf, Asna Ranmark, vows to master his swordsmanship to become the princess's dedicated protector. An instructor harshly corrects Princess Farah's posture, reminding her of the dignity required of a royal. Farah meekly apologizes for her mistake, while her guard Asna looks on in distress. Asna rushes forward, trying to intervene and asking the instructor to wait. The instructor, Elthia, sharply questions Asna's interference with the princess's royal education. Later, Asna apologizes to Farah, regretting that her own strictness has only added to the princess's burden. Asna recalls her grueling schedule, learning imperial culture alongside the princess she was assigned to protect. Spending time with Farah, Asna's sense of duty evolves into a genuine desire to support her. At night, Farah tries to reassure her worried attendant, insisting that she is fine with her difficult life. The princess offers a gentle smile, thanking Asna for her constant concern. Alone, Farah steels her resolve, believing she only needs to endure her harsh reality for the sake of her kingdom. Farah forces a smile through her tears, admitting it's a little sad that her parents don't seem to notice her efforts. Her attendant, Asna, finds the princess collapsed on the floor, calling out to her in alarm. Later, Farah's mother coldly reminds her that her true fiancé is a prince, not the Margrave's son she is about to meet. The princess reflects on her controlled life, resolving that she alone will decide who is worthy of her heart. She recalls a secret trip she once took to the Baldia territory, where she became lost while exploring the outside world for the first time. Farah fondly remembers the kind boy who helped her, wondering if he's still there and wishing she could meet him again. Back in the present, Rid is captivated by a stunning portrait of a beautiful dark elf woman. As Zack asks if he likes the painting, a knock at the door interrupts their conversation. Christy playfully teases Rid for being so mesmerized, leaving him flustered as he denies it. Zack reveals the woman in the portrait is Elthia, the king's consort, piquing Rid's curiosity even further. Rid is stunned to learn the woman in the portrait is Princess Farah's mother. He's instantly embarrassed, realizing he was captivated by the mother of his potential fiancé. Zack notes the resemblance, suggesting that if Rid likes the mother, he'll surely like the daughter. Rid shrewdly asks if Zack opposes the marriage, to which the attendant simply wishes for the princess's happiness. He recalls his father's words, realizing Renarti is divided into factions, and he needs to identify his allies. Deciding to test the waters, Rid cheekily asks if the princess is as beautiful as her mother, admitting he might fall for her. He boldly asks Zack for his support, hoping to secure a powerful ally within the Renart court. Zack considers the boy's audacious request with a knowing, unreadable smile. The attendant agrees to help, and the two seal their new secret alliance with a handshake. Watching from the side, Christy muses that Reiner's son is full of surprises and wonders what he's planning. Zack is impressed by Rid's sharp political insight, finding himself swayed by the boy's audacious request. The attendant is revealed to be Zack Liberton, head of his family and a blood relative of the king's consort, Elthia. It's further revealed that Zack secretly leads Renart's intelligence agency, answering directly to the king himself. Rid sits across from the spymaster, contemplating the weight of his new, powerful ally's promise. With their alliance forged, Zack shifts the conversation to the main event, Rid's audience with the king. Meanwhile, Princess Farah's guard reports to a stern Prince Rains about the movements of the noble Norris. Norris thanks the prince for accepting his proposal, confirming their secret plan is moving forward without issue. The prince is shown to be caught in a web of family drama, clashing with his father over the consort Elthia. A flashback explains that Rains and Farah are half-siblings, and Norris plans to use his blood ties to the queen to manipulate the prince. The court's complex loyalties are laid bare, revealing the emperor's affection for Elthia, who in turn despises Prince Rains. Prince Rains recalls how his mother's sorrow always weighed heavily on his mind.
He seethes with anger, vowing never to become a king like his father, whom he holds responsible for her pain. Norris capitalizes on the prince's anger, promising his support and a plan to control both the king and the consort. Norris offers a final, chilling piece of advice, solidifying his influence over the determined but naive prince. The prince walks alone, his resolve hardening as he accepts Norris's help, all for the sake of protecting his sister. In the shadows, a secret pact is sealed, as an operative accepts their orders with a quiet nod. The spymaster's superior asks for an update on the prince, checking on the progress of their scheme. Norris smirks, confirming everything is going according to plan, and eagerly awaits the arrival of the country bumpkin from Baldia. The story shifts to Princess Farah, who nervously examines her new Western-style dress, finding the foreign garment unfamiliar. Her attendant Asna reassures her that the dress is very becoming, earning a shy but grateful smile from the young princess. Princess Farah hopes her elegant appearance will be enough to impress her potential suitor. Her loyal guard, Asna, eagerly assures her that it most certainly will be. Asna kneels before the princess, praising her stunning look and promising she will captivate her guest. A relieved Farah prepares herself, just as a knock at the door announces an unexpected visitor. Farah's mother, the consort Elthia, enters with a stern expression, and the princess quickly thanks her for the dress. Elthia coldly reminds her daughter that this suitor is a commoner, not her true royal fiancé. The consort explains that this meeting is merely a test of Farah's value for a future, more important marriage. As Elthia departs, Asna rushes to Farah's side, concerned for the visibly shaken princess. Asna reminds the princess that she will meet many candidates, but the final choice of who is worthy will be hers alone. With a confident tip of her hat, Asna reaffirms her unwavering faith in the princess's judgment. Farah asks her guard if she knows anything about her suitor, but Asna only knows his name. The princess smiles warmly, touched by her attendant's kindness and unwavering support. Looking out the window, Farah thoughtfully repeats Rid's name, a hint of recognition in her eyes. Meanwhile, the noble Norris approaches the king, seeking permission to proceed with their secret plan. Rid's face flashes through his mind as Norris considers the need to test if this country boy is worthy of their princess. The king gives Norris his full authority, who gratefully accepts and promises to handle all the arrangements. With a final warning to be respectful, the king dismisses Norris, who confidently agrees before departing. Alone, the king reveals his true ambition: to use this marriage to elevate Renardi's status, despite being underestimated by his court. Back in his room, Rid touches his cheek, steeling his nerves for the upcoming formal meeting. He carefully checks his appearance in the mirror, making sure he looks presentable for his audience with royalty. His maid, Diana, teases him, saying he looks like a young lady preparing to meet a prince. A flustered Rid calls out her name, completely embarrassed by the comparison. She smirks, asking why he's been anxiously checking his reflection all morning. Christy joins in, telling him to be proud of his handsome features, though Rid bashfully insists his formal wear is just for show. She playfully pinches his cheek, joking that if he were a girl, she would have already swept him off his feet. Their fun is cut short when Zach arrives, announcing it's time for the audience and that Reiner is waiting. As they walk, Zach quietly begins to brief Rid on the current political landscape, sharing intel from his network. He reveals the opposition is led by a noble named Norris, who seems to have Prince Rhines under his influence. Rid thanks him for the valuable information, immediately asking about the consort Elthia's position in the power struggle. Zach speculates that Elthia's true motives differ from Norris's, suggesting she is playing a neutral role for now. Zach reveals the biggest obstacle is Prince Rhines, who is completely under the sway of the manipulative Norris. Rid questions how to approach the prince, wondering if he should try to win him over as a potential brother-in-law. Zach leans in with a cunning smile, suggesting a bold plan to shatter the prince's confidence. The spymaster clarifies that reasoning with the prince is futile, while he's infatuated with Norris's schemes. Zach explains the prince is emotionally unstable, caught in a web of contradictions that they must exploit. He assures Rid this plan is backed by Renart's pro-alliance nobles, promising to handle the political fallout himself. Zach then presents a gift, symbolizing the trust he's placing in Rid, who he now sees as a worthy player. Rid realizes this high-stakes political game is the perfect opportunity to prove his worth. Rid presses for the reason behind the prince's loyalty, but Zach humbly states he cannot reveal such sensitive information. Their discussion ends as they arrive for the audience, where they are immediately confronted by an impatient, shouting figure. Rid thanks the spy master for their long talk, asking if he will be joining them for the audience. Zack offers a cryptic smile, saying he looks forward to seeing Rid's performance, leaving the boy confused. Their carriage approaches the main castle, a massive strategic fortress where the king awaits. At the gate, a dark elf guard formally confirms the identity of the Baldia delegation. Reiner calmly confirms who they are and formally requests their audience with the king. The guard informs them of the protocol. All visitors must surrender their weapons before entering the king's presence. Rid and his retinue stand firm, their expressions hardening as they prepare for the confrontation ahead. Reiner decides to proceed with only Rid, Rubens, and Diana, ordering the rest of their party to wait behind. As they're led through a corridor with stunning traditional architecture, Rid is told to leave his belongings behind. Two maids in elegant kimonos slide open the final doors, announcing that the royal court is waiting for them inside. Rid's party enters the grand audience hall, where they are met by the stern-faced Renart court. The dark elf nobles watch the newcomers with cold, calculating expressions. Rid stands with his father and their guards, presenting a united and resolute front. From the shadows, the court scrutinizes them with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Reiner signals for them to proceed, leading his son into the heart of the political arena. As they walk, Rid notices a subtle but deliberate detail that feels out of place. He realizes with a start that only a single chair has been prepared for their entire delegation. A smug noble explains this was intentional, a calculated insult to only acknowledge Reiner's status. Reiner turns to his son, silently asking how he wishes to respond to this blatant disrespect. With a confident glance, Rid assures his father he can handle it, ready to face the challenge head-on. Rid realizes his father is seething with rage over the blatant disrespect. He glances at his father, unfazed by the hostility, and cheekily wonders if they just don't like him. Behind him, his two guards are visibly fuming, ready to defend his honor against the court's disrespect. He quickly signals for his overprotective guards to calm down, relieved when they reluctantly obey. His father instructs him to bow his head and wait, an order Rid dutifully obeys. Reiner formally announces their delegation from the Baldia Margravate, presenting themselves before the silent, watchful court. The King of Renart finally speaks, commanding the entire delegation to raise their heads. Rid raises his head to see the King of Renart on his throne, flanked by his consort Elthia, Prince Rains, and Princess Farah. His gaze meets the hostile glare of Prince Rains and the wide, curious eyes of Princess Farah. Undaunted, Rid meets their gazes, his expression a mask of calm and unwavering resolve. The King of Renart formally greets Reiner, acknowledging their long acquaintance from his throne. Reiner responds with polite deference while Rid sizes up the dark elf monarch for the first time. The king explains he was eager to meet the boy who might marry his daughter, asking Reiner to present him. Rid steps forward with a confident bow, formally introducing himself and expressing his anticipation for the meeting. The king notes Rid is the same age as Princess Farah, while Prince Rains glares at the unexpected confidence. With the introductions made, the king prompts his daughter to step forward and present herself. The young princess begins her formal introduction, stating her name and title with practiced grace. As she reveals her name as Farah, Rid is left completely stunned, a wave of recognition hitting him. Rid quickly kneels, formally greeting the princess he now realizes he has met before. Farah stares at Rid's human ears, a sudden memory sparking as she recalls their previous encounter. A montage introduces the royal family, the consort Elthia, Prince Rains, and the queen Elias. The king, Elias Renarte, formally addresses Rid, stating his desire for a good relationship between their houses. The king puts Rid on the spot, asking for his thoughts on the marriage proposal in front of the entire court. Prince Rains angrily interrupts, accusing his father of being foolish for asking such a serious question of a child. Rid identifies the noble Norris and realizes he must confront both him and the prince to make a lasting impression. Norris smugly agrees with the prince's outburst, confirming his influence over the young royal. The king calmly asks for their opinions, subtly challenging their open defiance. Rid considers his next move, deciding to say the one thing his opponents would hate to hear. With unwavering resolve, Rid declares his absolute intention to make the marriage a success. His bold declaration sends a shockwave through the court, leaving Farah flustered and the king intrigued. The king lays out the political landscape, explaining their current alliance with Baldia is a deterrent to their neighbors. He then questions the trustworthiness of the Magnolia Empire, putting Rid on the spot in front of the court. Rid counters that from an enemy's perspective, the alliance is weak, but a marriage would solidify their bond. He explains this union would grant Baldia the justification to defend Renarde without waiting for imperial command. The court nobles grudgingly admit his logic, prompting Rid to press his advantage. Rid declares that making their enemies believe an attack on Renarde is an attack on Baldia is the ultimate deterrent. Prince Reinz furiously dismisses the argument, but Rid calmly clarifies the real issue is how their enemies perceive the alliance. The prince is left speechless, unable to grasp the nuance of Rid's political strategy. Rid confidently turns to his father, confirming that Baldia's army only moves to defend its own land without direct orders. Reiner calmly addresses the court, stating that while Rid is a child, his assessment of the political situation is undeniably correct. Rid cheekily adds that he has other reasons for the marriage, but he'll keep them a secret until after the wedding. The king erupts in laughter, completely taken aback by the boy's bold and clever response. He muses that Reiner's son is a terrifyingly unconventional heir, one who would make a fearsome enemy. An enraged Prince Reinz shouts at his father, dismissing Rid's argument as childish nonsense. The king calmly tells his son to broaden his perspective, noting even Reiner acknowledges the boy's sound logic. The humiliated prince can only bow his head in silent fury, forced to concede the point. The king acknowledges Rid's sharp intellect, but ponders if his words are backed by martial skill. He then challenges Rid to prove his worth not just with words, but with a demonstration of his fighting prowess. The scene shifts to a large arena, setting the stage for the unexpected physical test. A confused Rid stands in the arena, wondering how his formal meeting with the princess suddenly became a public duel. His maid, Diana, presents him with a wooden practice sword, which Rid gratefully accepts. She explains that while it's a simple weapon, she personally selected it for him to teach his opponent a lesson. Rid questions why his personal guard is the one providing him with a weapon for the duel. With a terrifyingly intense expression, Diana urges him to deliver a harsh punishment for the disrespect shown to him. As Rid prepares, he realizes the nobles are still scheming and that his opponent has been changed at the last minute. The king formally presents Rid's opponent, his own son, Prince Reinz, who stands ready for battle. Rid stares in complete shock, unable to believe he's been pitted against the prince himself. From the sidelines, his retainers eagerly cheer for him to defeat the arrogant royal. He suddenly recalls Zack's advice to shatter the prince's confidence for the good of the kingdom. Rid realizes with annoyance that the spy master knew this was the plan all along and deliberately kept him in the dark. Prince Reinz glares at Rid's confident smirk, while Norris notes from the sidelines how irritatingly composed the boy appears. The king officially begins the duel, declaring the match will end only when one of them concedes or is unable to fight. Before the duel can begin, Rid raises his hand to interrupt, announcing he has a proposal to make. He boldly suggests that only the king himself should have the authority to decide when the match is over. Rid clarifies he wants no outside interference, a move that only further enrages the fuming prince. With a cunning smile, Rid glances toward the nobles, subtly challenging their authority and schemes. The king accepts the terms, agreeing the duel will continue until he personally calls a halt to it. The prince taunts Rid, declaring his loss is inevitable, but Rid calmly dismisses the threat as mere childish words. Reinz stoops to a new low, callously bringing up Rid's sick mother to try and unnerve him. The prince's cruel taunt strikes a nerve, but he presses his attack, mockingly asking if Rid is just a mama's boy. Rid tightens his grip on the wooden sword, his patience wearing thin as the prince crosses a line. He remains silent, realizing Norris orchestrated this entire provocation to make him lose his composure. The duel officially begins, with the two rivals locked in an intense, unyielding stare-down. From the sidelines, Norris gives his foolish prince a final, smug word of encouragement. Rid calmly questions if the prince is all talk, turning his opponent's taunts right back at him. The prince is left speechless by the sharp retort, his arrogance completely shattered. Enraged by the insult, the prince charges forward, raising his sword for a furious strike. Rid effortlessly parries the powerful blow, stopping the prince's attack with shocking ease. The prince stares in disbelief, stunned by the overwhelming force behind Rid's simple block. In a single, fluid motion, Rid disarms the prince and sends him crashing to the arena floor.
The entire Renart court watches in stunned silence as their prince is effortlessly defeated. Rid stands victorious over his fallen opponent, casting a long shadow across the arena floor. He presses the tip of his wooden sword against the prince's throat, ending the match in a single move. With a cold expression, Rid mockingly asks the defeated royal if he's already given up. Refusing to admit defeat, the humiliated prince scrambles to his feet, seething with rage. Rid casually turns his back, telling the prince he won't be so careless in their next exchange. Enraged by the blatant disrespect, the prince charges forward, determined to reclaim his honor. Rid once again parries the attack with ease, completely unimpressed by the prince's sloppy swordsmanship. He calmly points out that the prince's simple-minded strategy is written all over his face. The prince foolishly believes he can win with brute force, declaring victory is his if he can just push through. Rid effortlessly blocks the prince's sword, his superior skill on full display. With a single, decisive strike, Rid sends the prince and his weapon flying across the arena. He points his sword at the fallen royal, mocking him for being all talk and no action. The Renart court erupts in shocked murmurs, unable to believe what they're witnessing. Princess Farah looks on with wide-eyed amazement, while her mother remains stoically silent. Rid coldly asks the dazed prince if he has finally come to his senses. He looms over his opponent, declaring the vast difference in their power should now be obvious. The humiliated prince clenches his fist, refusing to accept his defeat even as he's told to stand. He seethes, unable to comprehend losing to the son of a country bumpkin from Magnolia. Rid then reveals his own sword was tampered with, questioning if the prince feels any shame for his unfair advantage. Rid furiously demands the prince get up, his anger ignited by the personal insults. The prince can only stare in disbelief, completely rattled by Rid's sudden intensity. Rid coldly observes that if the prince won't fight, he should simply accept his loss and stay down. The prince struggles to his feet, recalling past humiliations and his dream of becoming a worthy king. Refusing to be labeled as weak, the prince rises with renewed fury, vowing to defeat his opponent. The prince's eyes burn with rage, reflecting the image of a calm and composed Rid. Rid notes the change in his opponent's eyes, ready to face the prince's renewed but reckless assault. As they clash again, Norris watches from the sidelines with a cold, calculating gaze. Rid once again outmaneuvers the prince, delivering a powerful blow that sends him reeling. The prince is sent flying, his face a mask of utter shock at being so completely overpowered. Princess Farah and her guard watch in stunned silence as Rid completely dominates the duel. The princess struggles to comprehend her brother's utter defeat, while her guard is impressed by Rid's power. The prince lies defeated, realizing the vast difference in their abilities should have ended the match already. Asna explains Rid's true goal, to demonstrate his power without either losing or completely crushing the prince. A noble watches from the stands, realizing they can only wait for the king's final judgment. In the spotlight of the arena, Rid considers whether he should force the prince to admit his defeat. Princess Farah smiles with relief, realizing Rid isn't fighting with any malicious intent. Asna realizes Rid is trying to teach the prince a lesson, but her intense focus draws the princess's attention. The prince remembers being disarmed and held at sword point multiple times, his humiliation growing. Rid is surprised by the prince's unexpected resilience and once again asks the defiant royal if he's ready to admit defeat. The prince screams in frustration, calling Rid a monster as he struggles against the overwhelming force. Rid coolly denies being a monster, instead suggesting he is something far more terrifying. He leans in, proposing that from the prince's perspective, he must seem like a demon. With another effortless move, Rid sends the prince crashing to the ground yet again. Standing over his opponent, Rid decides to use a different tactic, questioning the prince's motives for his earlier insults. He reminds the fallen royal that he was the one who spoke the words and must now face the consequences. Rid directly asks if the noble Norris was the one who orchestrated the provocation. His suspicions are confirmed as he realizes the prince was merely a pawn in a larger game. Despite his defeat, the prince furiously vows to never concede, no matter the cost. Rid calmly raises his hand, preparing to bring the one-sided duel to a definitive end. With the prince defeated at his feet, Rid raises his hand and, to the entire court's astonishment, declares his own loss.